my career for the last 10 years has been evolving this beautiful place that I've created. It's called Playground. And in 2016, we opened our doors to the public. And since its inception, we've been committed to fostering community change through a lot of our programming, our workshops, our cultural hub that we have here is focused on bridging the gap between community and our patrons. A lot of the time, as business owners, we have a lot more insight in how our customers, our peers interact with the community at large. And we take these kinds of actions and collective goals really seriously. With this in mind, Playground has shaped my current existence as well as my future, in understanding that like it's people, we're in the business of people, and understanding them and working with them and making sure that we're allowing for this platform to actually uplift people and most importantly like allow a conversation between strangers, um what I've realized that in owning a business is that you have to wake up every day and stay consistent. And so with my brick and mortar, we operate as a coffee shop. We have a now bar. We started off just doing wine service with my friend Nico. And over the last few years, we've really, really stepped into this newer version of Playground, which is allowing more like nighttime live performances, events, talks, as well as also just like really incredible pop-ups that have allowed my friends to start something new, and deep dive into a creative like impulse that they have. So Playground, for lack of a better word, is an actual playground. It's an artist playground. We've really seen a lot of our own, mentors, friends, peers, like scale their ideas through our brick and mortar and beyond. And I'm so lucky to be able to have been in business for almost 10 years and consistently sustain this effort to just like work with people, collaborators, collectives, organizations who are like minded.
Yeah, that's really amazing that it's been a decade. Can you talk more about like how the idea of playground came to you and like the days, like the early days when you started the project?
Yeah. Well, I was working at 8 Ball Community now. It was called 8 Ball Zines when it first moved to Chinatown. And so we were doing a lot of, when I say like just a lot, like we were running around, putting together shows, fairs. We were also like really involved, like heavily involved in the New York Art Book Fair. And I found myself coming back to New York after a year of being traveling. Actually, it was like a year and a half. I had lived in China in 2013, and then I moved to the Netherlands in 2014. And I came back and I had realized how much of a disconnect there was. I hadn't really had a community in college when I was studying at the new school. And, for my own purpose, I felt like I needed to find that. And so when I started working at 8 Ball, a lot of those ideas of community had started to crystallize. And that was through friends and like, collaborators. We all felt like we were missing something. And that summer before Playground opened, I was just, throwing DIY shows, having like art spaces for people to just like freely think about things. And I was actually doing a lot of podcasting in that time. And there's like audio engineering shows for 8 Ball. And I was like, you know what? We got to start doing these like DIY, like pirate radio kind of like angle with our programming. And so I originally was like, okay, I'm going to leave behind my art career, my economics degree, whatever, and I'm just going to become like a podcaster. I'm going to become an artist, a musician or whatever. And I quickly started to realize that like there was no structure in that. And I think I like was becoming aware and more like aware of the fact that like I actually had to get a job. I was like, this is really hard. And I applied to at that time, like, I want to say I applied to like 20 jobs in like 3 months. I did a bunch of interviews. I would even show up to interviews and people would just like look at me and be like, actually, we're not interested. I actually had someone who looked at me upon entering an interview and told me to leave. And that kind of shook me to my core because I've never experienced like this visceral reaction from someone looking at me and wanting me to like leave their presence. So I was a little bummed and I was really scared. If I could be really frank, I was kind of at like my wit's end, and I wasn't understanding like how I could sustain myself after college. I ideally wanted to like move out of my family's home and start a business and start a career or something. And so I thought about re-entering the service force. And I'd done some service work in college. I was a baker in college. I worked at Momofuku in college, and I did retail. And I just was like, let me just revert back to my roots. And I even found it extremely difficult to enter that workforce. And so I just started babysitting. I did the little things, and my friends were always like pushing me to do other creative things. And, I was like, I'm going to just try everything. So after I graduated college, I started coming by around to my dad's hardware store. It's always been here in Bedstuy for the last like 20, 30 years at that point in my life. And I'd taken a step back from it. And I was just, when you're from the city, a lot of city kids don't want to live here. And that was like my biggest goal in life, was just like get my degree here and then just move abroad, which I did. And I came back and I realized I couldn't run away anymore. And when I went into my dad's hardware store, it was just like really cold. There was bad lighting, like things were flickering. There was dust everywhere. Things were unorganized. And the only person that was in the entire store was my dad. And so I like had to take a look around. I was like, hold on, this is not the same place that I grew up in. When we were children, like my sisters and I, we spent a lot of our childhood here, and we pretty much grew up on this block. We were always running around, playing like with the kids on the block. And it was like an understanding that we all had that like this was our safe space in our home. And I couldn't recognize my home. So I felt really like, obviously I was frustrated. I was upset. Like, how could he let this place get to this point? And I realized that he was also struggling and not telling everyone what he wanted to do, like what his plans were. And so I started to slowly cement this idea to him. I was like, why don't we just like start moving a little bit of the inventory out and selling it? And he was really upset, like at first he was really resistant and couldn't tell me why he didn't like the idea. But then one day he came to the store, and my friends and I had packed everything up in boxes, ready for them to be shipped out or sold back to the distributor or put in our basement. We were working really, really fast because we wanted this place to feel like it was manageable and functional. And then I realized that once the inventory was gone, I was like, wow, this is a really big space. Like we can do something with this. And it clicked. I was like, whoa, what if we do something here? And it was a really crazy idea. My friends were like, I don't know about that. They were probably way more confused than my dad. Like, why would you want to choose this? And so I had spent a lot of time in coffee shops when I was living in Amsterdam, not coffee shops like smoke shops, sorry, cafes, where I was just like always on my computer, hanging out with my friends, like writing a paper. And in college, my one of my really, really good friends, Brian, he and I had started this clothing line, which is like an intersex clothing line. And were always at a coffee shop until they closed. And it was always just so much like, there was like such a fast paced environment. We were meeting so many people, and we were just like, wait, we got to just like have our own one day, and we got to have our own workspace. And so after college, when I'd come back into my dad's hardware store, it clicked to me that we could turn this place into a place where people hang out and spend their time. And I was like, what's the easiest way to approach a space where people can hang out and we can also make money to sustain this business? I was like, let's do a coffee shop. Let's just put an espresso machine in here and let's figure it out. And so that summer before, we were like throwing shows and testing the space out. We actually did a show with Onyx Collective, which was really, really cool. And I didn't realize like how awesome that would be for me. And like pretty much like the stepping stone to what Playground would end up being. And a few months later, we got our food permit. which was probably the hardest thing ever, getting a hardware store to turn into a food establishment was, there's a lot of administrative, bureaucratic things that you have to like actually put yourself through. And I was really young in that time. And so I had a lot of help from working with my dad's clients and people who were working in the Department of Buildings and Department of Health. And it still wasn't enough. It's like, wow, I was like, wow, I'm only getting as far as I can with what I have. And it's still not far enough. And so my friends and I, we were just like ideating, like, what can we do here? Like, how do we push this place to become like the best version of itself? And I was like, I don't know. It just feels like we're like children. And then my friend looked at me and he's like, it's kind of like a playground. And I was like, it is a playground. And that's how playground came to be. Well, very, I will always remember that moment because it was with someone that I really admired and who I actually ended up working with for a few months when we first started this business. And he had given me the voice to actually talk about this business and this idea from my brain to out in the universe. And he spoke it into existence. And that's how Playground became. We were just like frustrated, but then also really optimistic. And it felt like for the first time, we all had something to look forward to. And it made sense because Playground is like a place also where my sisters and I were raised. We like spent so much of our childhood here, like hanging out, running around this place. I was like, wait, the synthesis and the synergy of this name encapsulates everything that we've been since we were children. So it actually was just like the most perfect way to talk about this experience that we were in.
Yeah. And even now, like to think of like all the, I mean, most of like the creative scene in New York, I mean, many of them live in like, Bushwick, Bed-Stuy, Crown Heights, Ridgewood, and for some reason I feel like there are like few establishments that like would bring those people like every weekend, and I feel like Playground is one of them. And I remember talking to you one day, and I just think that it's so important to have like physical space where we could all like gather and not just take it for granted and just gather online. Because I mean, especially in this time in the US, I feel like we need to all feel yeah, connected. And so you said like it was difficult like getting the food certification. And like did you face other challenges?
I think the challenge was like the attempt of turning it into something it wasn't. You know what I mean? And I think when at first I was, I was going into it like very blindly, not having any prerequisites. I kind of almost felt like Zoran, where it's like a person who had never been the mayor before is now our mayor. And the gates are shutting. It felt like I was talking about this with one of my colleagues earlier, where I had so much imposter syndrome that I couldn't actually like go to things and feel like myself. Like I felt like I was like hiding behind myself. And so when I would go into the offices to put paperwork in, they'd always be like, "So where's your dad? Where's your mom?" Things like that. And so I realized very soon after that wasn't I wasn't actually happy, but it made me realize that I was actually like people were for more or like less reasons, they were like not believing in me. Like I wasn't like someone that they could like actually like give me the acclamation to be like, hey, you can run a business. And so it actually charged me up. It made me realize that I had to actually stand up for myself in that moment. And so the offices that I was going to, I was like, listen, it's me and it's no one else. So you're going to have to do this for me. And I just showed up every single time with a really good attitude, my head held high. And, soon enough, like everyone in the office knew my name, and I'd always come in and I was in a chipper mood. And I think I'd never met anyone like me before. And I realized that I had never met myself like that before. You know what I mean? I was like, whoa, like you're doing exactly what you're supposed to. And you're standing up to this thing, which is very brutal and it's tough, but you're meant for it. And so I just like, started playing the part. And a lot of it was just like becoming like my own best friend and talking myself through these things because like a lot of it is a waiting game in New York. Like you have to wait for like your health inspection. Before you get your health inspection, I worked with this administration called the Small Business Administration, and they do these really incredible free pro bono programs in helping business owners get a guide through the process. So like you fill out all your paperwork through them. They give you a checklist of like, get this, get your plumbing work order, get your electrical, then create your floor plan, get an architect, work with an engineer, get a person that works in the Department of Buildings, then the Department of Health, like Department of Transportation. And apparently the sidewalk is owned by the DOT. So like anytime you even put a bench out there, now all of a sudden you're intruding on Department of Transportation. It's like all these agencies that have so many different things were people that I've never been in front of. So I was just kind of like, okay, got it. And so every day someone would send me back to a different office, and it was just like so much work that I had to do. Then I realized they make this stuff intentionally hard because they don't want people to follow through and honestly succeed, And so the biggest feat, people say like, oh, it's really easy. Like, anybody can open a business. Yeah, anybody totally can. It takes a person to also like a specific kind of person to open it and then stick to your guns and continue to be that person and show up and do things the correct way. Cause like you can't really like cheat the system as much as like as many people think they're gonna. But I realized that also in my time in owning this business that I had to go about ways where it required me to wait for 6 months, get approval, get my health inspection. And that's why we opened on Halloween, because we had waited for so long that by the time it was, it was time for us to open, the next day was Halloween. And I was like, I don't care. We're opening on Halloween, guys.
How did you keep your like hope high when when you have moments of doubts and you're like, okay, is it what I'm supposed to do? Like, how did you keep hope with Playground? Because like, I mean, for like, it's been 10 years, you've done so many different projects within Playground, and how do you, like, what keeps you like going every day? Like, what keeps you motivated to like, keep, I don't know, like improving or like finding new ways to make it interesting to you?
I think it's just about motivation is largely about like what motivates you, right? Like what would you do if you were if it relied on you? And I think so many things are, so many people and so many things rely on me, and I have to show up every day to like get this done, get that done. And actually is like obviously that's the motivation because I have a huge team now and we all deserve to, get the proper attention and stuff. But also I think it's my motivation is usually just like my interest. And, that's why we started radio all over again, because it made sense that like I felt disconnected from Playground so many times because I couldn't find myself in it. And like, or I would do something and then it wouldn't feel great. And then I would still do it. And then I would find myself down the line kind of resentful that I never had a kid felt connected to the project at large, And so now I'm like, I'm only going to do this if it works for me. And I think a lot of people create businesses because it's, it's accessible, it's fine, but like, it's an opportunity at the end of the day. And your opportunity has to have 5 components, which is like you're solving something. It's a customer pain, like maybe something you see that like could be fixed because you're doing it. Another one of them, and I'll keep it short with this one, but like another one of them is like also like, how do you actually like scale the thing? Like if you were to do it, like how do you see a future in it? Because you can't just have an idea. You also have to be able to implement a system. And lastly, like, does it fit you? Does it fit your lifestyle? Do you care enough about this? Do you find yourself like feeling represented through your business? And I feel now that is the biggest conduit through me and my business is my connection to it, is that I wouldn't do this if I didn't feel like I could see myself in it, And so most importantly is feeling like the ultimate, like, and true, like relationship with the thing that you built so that it never feels like out of scope for you. And that's been my ultimate motivator, is like, that's the reason why I get up in the morning. Why I do these things is because I really do enjoy all the things that I've created here, because I ultimately, individually, and in isolation, I love all the things that we have here, you know?
And yeah, yeah, I'm curious about like, so you mentioned in the beginning, you mentioned the wine, playground wines, and the radio. Uh, like, what's next with playground? Do you have any upcoming events or any upcoming projects that you're working on? Or
Right now, we're working on so many different things. We're also like properly turning 10 years old this year. And so we have an incredible celebration that I'm planning for Halloween. And then, as always, our block party. Really excited about it. And this year is going to be really interesting because last year was a little bit difficult for us because we didn't get our full block permit. And that was intentional. That was like something by the city. And I think at large, like, it had to do with like the administration, the previous mayoral, even like administration that was in that had taken office. And I think now that we have a different mayor and someone who actually cares about the city, our celebrations are actually in abundance, like we're able to do things without any boundaries. And so I'm really excited to throw a block party under the Zoran administration. That's what I'm excited about, like just being able to like bring all my friends in, have an incredibly safe space, but make it super intentional, because like there is a genuine like pressure on small communities to do these kinds of things and feel like isolated or even like not supported. But I, for the first time in my life, really, really hope that like this year's block celebration and block party festival that we do is in homage to our community, the neighborhood that we grew up in. And I think that like as we celebrate 10 years, like the fight it's in resistance, and just being able to like prove to the city that like businesses, communities that live here, all this, and small or large, like deserve to actually like celebrate themselves, and it shouldn't come at a cost. Like everything is already so expensive, and to be able to run a business in New York is just like way different than it was even 10 years ago when I started. But the one thing that I'm going to stay true to is being able to express our joy and look at our neighbors and like spend the day like just being able to like be at home, and most importantly like just like sit in deep reflection about like what it is that we are capable of and the strength of our community. So I'm excited to just like celebrate a lot this year if it all like is able to come to fruition.
yeah, yeah, I'm excited too. Like, we need spaces. Like, we need to feel the joy, especially right now. I mean, we can't let fear inundate our hearts.
No, no, no. And it'll toughen us, and it'll stiffen and harden our hearts. And I think you have to remain soft in all of this. And that's what I continue to tell myself, is that like you do have to give yourself all of the comfort and grace, because
Mm.
it's a long road ahead. So
Yeah, I mean, like, thank you so much, Zenat, for this short interview. Just like hearing your experience, I feel like it's a battle every day. Like, to just like, it's crazy that it's never done. You always have to. You're facing new challenges, and it's just going and going. And it's really nice that like you have this. It's like a plant. I see playground as a plant, and it's like alive, and we're all like in the
growing.
vicinity of it, and things start to happen independently, but we're all part of it. But yeah, I'm curious, do you have any, before we end this interview, do you have any advice for people who might be interested in opening a business or just being an entrepreneur, because you've been doing it for like 10 years? And also, like, I think your story is so inspiring because like you went to the new school and you did like you did what people told us to do, like this is the right thing, the right path to do. But even with that, you were faced with challenges regarding jobs, and then you took like your life in your hands, and you created your own reality with playground. And I think that's very, yeah, inspiring. And I'm sure other people will be inspired. So
Yeah. I mean, I think I loved your the characterization of playground like a plant or like a tree. But I think the one thing that I can always say is that like there is no forest without trees. You know, like you always think you're standing alone, but then you look around and like all of our roots are connected. So just being able to have a really good team and like working with people who understand you, can pick up the slack for you, and most importantly, like value your opinion and what you bring to this world, you know? One thing I like kind of struggled with at first was like giving myself that permission to just be that person. And it takes time, you know, like it's like, you know, strengthening a muscle, like being able to just like you know, understand that like the weight that you feel is not something that you should carry on by yourself, and that there is a lot of potential in just like asking for help, and that like this road that I'm on is like very, very like it's not paved, but at the same time, it is so wonderful because when you're like innovative and you are an entrepreneur, a lot of it is just figuring it out as you go. And like I can give advice someone who like wants to do this, but I also would love to just sit down with someone who's like, well, I don't know how to get there. And it's like, well, why do you want to get there? What is the reason? Like, why would you put this idea out into the universe and then want this to exist, right? So it's like just like questioning our ideas and our um like our morals and our ethics, like understanding like what exactly it is that you're contributing to society is the first step, you know? And I'm like, it's such an incredible thing when I hear about other business owners like doing this too, and like if not for longer or shorter, like you have to show up every day and just stay consistent. And so as long as you're like aware of that challenge, like just being there, it'll all fall into place. And I really do wish whoever feels that this is a you know the right choice for them to feel it in their bones, because this is like probably one of the most like surreal experiences that I've ever had. And you know, again, it chose me. I didn't choose it. So I'm just like very lucky and, you know, grateful every day that like I'm able to do this thing despite every major disaster, epidemic, pandemic, and all that. Because that means you're just more likely to meant to be here, you know? So just keep fighting, really. Like, and finding your crew, your community will help you. People will back you up in those fights, those battles that you say, and feeling like you're actually equipped for whatever storm that you're gonna go through, you know? And also after the storm comes the sunshine. Like things pass, and enjoying things for what they are, because like things are tough, but like be allowing yourself to just know that like everything is temporary, and most importantly that like you will get through
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, I love this.
Oh,
Yeah, thank you so much, Zenat.
you anytime.